All right, man, peace. So, brothers, well over 2 years ago or so, I did a video pertaining to the topic of whether or not black male athletes should be considered as leaders of the so-called black community. And of course, the answer is no. Why is that? Because they're bought and paid for. As I've stated numerous times on this channel thus far, they're all just pawns of the corporatocracy. You constantly have to be wary of what the messages are that the most prominent black male athletes are being used to dispense, especially to the so-called black community. And in this current modern age that we're living in, one of the most insidious ideologies that black male athletes are being used to peddle is the non-binary asexual agenda. That being the genderless mentality, where you're not associating with being overly quote-unquote masculine or outright feminine, i.e. a homosexual or a transgender. You're exuding the energy of both genders in one. And that's why you see so many prominent black male athletes dressing in tight fitted clothes, normally from Europe. They have quote unquote stylists that are telling them how to dress, and behind closed doors, they're being put through the process of rising up the levels of Luciferianism, i.e. masonry. They're proverbial gods here on the earth to be utilized as idols, especially for the so-called black community. I have a lot of people who ask me why I talk about sports and entertainment so much on this channel. I really don't talk about sports and entertainment in an inordinate way unless you're someone who does not understand what you're listening to, because for the most part, I use these topics just as a backdrop to address more serious issues with the understanding that that's what I can use to reel in the so-called black man so that we can have more serious conversations. Whether the video is about sports or not, we're going to address serious conversations so that the black man can be imbued with a ruling class mentality and prepare himself for the transition to come, where he has to be prepared to be a leader. That's the main thing. We have to prepare for leadership. And a lot of cats do not understand that. It's not just about yelling on the corner or blaming the so-called white man or the black woman for all of our problems. We have to address ourselves first, because we are our number one opponent. Not the so-called white man, not the black woman. Of course, they have to be addressed, as well as the other races, the conventions of this society, etc. But we have to understand that we're in this condition because we failed to adhere to our part of the bargain that we made with the Most High. Our part of the covenant we failed to live up to. So that's why we're in this condition right now. We have to watch at every turn what many of the tricks and forms of chicanery are going to be used against us to maintain our low estate. And one of the main mechanisms that they use, one of the main machinations that they use, is to prop up so-called black athletes as leaders. Whether they be LeBron James or Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Stephen Curry, Cam Newton, or in the music world, Jay-Z, Cardi B, or long deceased so-called paragons or idols like Tupac, Biggie Smalls. Whoever it is, they have to be thoroughly scrutinized because they are being used to push Luciferianism on our people. And that brings us to Mr. Cam Newton. And the reason why I decided to make this video is because I plan to use this video here, or this backdrop, as a springboard for further videos in this topic, especially pertaining to how the so-called black male athlete dresses. They have him dressing in an extremely effeminate way, especially the basketball players, and it's trickled over into the football world, predominantly using Mr. Cam Newton, who I believe is an MK asset myself. I did a video on his coach maybe a year or so ago, a year and a half ago. His coach is named Ron Rivera, and he is associated with, or was associated with, the U.S. military. He came to a press conference with a slogan on his t-shirt called "Control Your Ape." And the reason why that resonated with me is because I understand that there are certain slogans or phrases that are used as triggers to initiate certain alters within the mind state of the asset, i.e. a monarch athlete, in this case being Cam Newton. A lot of people are wondering why Cam is dressing so strangely this season. He's always dressed on the eccentric side, but he seems to have stepped it up another notch, especially in the realm of feminine energy. As we can see, he's now wearing a scarf that has him looking like Susan Sarandon in the film Thelma and Louise. The brother just looks absurd. And this cat here, Jason Whitlock, as usual, he's going to call him out on it. He's not quite sure why Cam is doing what he's doing, but he is making a correlation between how Cam is choosing to dress right now and his failures on the football field. He believes that Cam is dressing this way to compensate for a certain loss of ability to make his own decisions on the football field, whether or not he can use his physicality, run whenever he wants to. That's a part of it. But another part of it is that Cam Newton is being used as an intermediary to try to influence more impressionable, younger so-called black men to dress in a more effeminate way. Please understand that they venerate the divine feminine as well as her son, the divine hermaphrodite. And masculinity is under an assault. They will use the super liberal so-called Negro to tell you who cares, what's the big deal, be more open-minded. And that's because super liberal Negroes are not three-dimensional thinkers. But you know what, let's get to this video. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Cam likes action, danger, freedom, and attention. The way Tom Brady plays the game is no fun for Cam. The Brady way relies on routine, discipline, precision, efficiency, and order.
It's very obvious that Cam Newton is going through some type of programming phase. And even if you don't adhere to the notion that he's under some type of mind control, it's very clear, very obvious, at least to me, that he's having an issue with his self-image. Any man who addressed in this way is telling me that he has a problem with his own masculinity, and he's trying to push the boundaries on what's acceptable in society. He's being used as an agent of chaos. What type of grown man will walk out in the middle of the street with a scarf around his head looking like that, or a handkerchief around his head looking like that? He looks like an old Russian lady that should be sitting in the park feeding pigeons.
Starboy hairstyle has to be maintained. You have to give that thought and energy. Tom Brady and Drew Brees aren't wasting time during the week thinking about their hair. On game days, they're not standing in front of their locker stall, untying and tying a Mary Poppins scarf around their head. It's a waste.
He said a Mary Poppins scarf.
It's a handful of NFL and NBA players who seek attention by trolling us with their fashion choices and appearance.
Absolutely. A lot of silly black males who are looking for attention, as Whitlock stated, by dressing as extravagantly as possible and believing that in somehow, some way, they're quote-unquote pushing the envelope, when really all they're doing is impressing a lot of feminine energy on a lot of young boys out here. They have no idea how much harm they're doing. And it's because most of these dudes were raised up in black matriarchal environments. And if you pay very close attention, and I mentioned this in a video in the past, most of the NBA players who truly immerse themselves in this feminine style of dress, the Russell Westbrooks, the Dwayne Wades, etc., I believe they were doing that as a coping mechanism because they viewed themselves as an alpha on the team, but the media and the public at large viewed them as a beta. So they were trying to garner more attention for themselves due to their standing or their lack of standing on their own team and their belief that they truly deserved all the attention by now dressing extravagantly. Because Dwayne Wade had to diminish himself for LeBron James's sake. Russell Westbrook was diminished as long as he played with Kevin Durant. So they tried to compensate for it by dressing like idiots, and it became a part of their brand.
They're Dennis Rodman lights. They want the world to know they're still wrestling with their identity. It's not
And then, of course, you have the biggest attention monger of all, Mr. LeBron James.
Unusual for people in their 20s and 30s to still be working through those issues. Most of us
And we know Odell Beckham. He just screams feminine energy. He gets very upset when people accuse him of being a homosexual, which is very strange to me because it's very clear that he's very accepting of his quote-unquote feminine side. So why would you get upset by people assuming that? What's truly ironic is that the person that he's standing next to in this photo, Mr. Aaron Rodgers, has also been accused of quote-unquote allegedly being a homosexual.
Don't do it at work. We do it amongst our friends.
And this dude here, Russell Westbrook, he just needs prayer.
And family in our personal lives. We play a role at work. Now that he can't roam free, Cam doesn't like the role of NFL quarterback. It's too restrictive. It's hiding the beauty behind his madness.
I partially agree with that. I think that Cam is a bit of an agent of chaos, no doubt about that. I also think that he feels free for the first time because of the change in ownership. Remember that Jerry Richardson told Cam Newton that he wants his quarterback to be buttoned up. That means no wild hairstyles, no tattoos. Over the course of the past few months, we've seen Cam's dress style go up to another level of extravagance and eccentricity, and we've also seen him change his hairstyle.
But no, Cam is serious about football again. He cuts the hair and returns the scarves to Aunt Jemima.
He said Cam got to return the scarf to Aunt Jemima.
All right, joining the desk now are Fox Sports NFL analyst TJ Hushman.
Wiley just caught that. He spun his head over to Whitlock real quick and turned back.
And LeVar Arrington.
What?
Marcellus, start with you. Is Cam's hair in outrageous fashion proof he's not serious about being a franchise quarterback?
I think it's proof that Cam Newton is going through an athlete's version of a midlife crisis. Whenever these athletes reach 30 years old and they have not reached the mountaintop, whether it be championships or some other form of accolade, they do go through an athlete's version of a midlife crisis, which normally comes at about 30 years old. For an athlete, 30 years old is equivalent to being 50 years old for a regular person.
Throw a question back at you, big dog. Yeah. Don't take you that much time to get that right, huh? Not at all. That ain't crispy, though.
That don't take that long. All Will has to do is put some juices from berries in his hair every morning.
Crispy. Little baby kid in play. Look, was he serious about being a franchise quarterback in 2015 when he was dressing different and started these waves in terms of what his fashion looked like? And
Now, that was eccentric right there. But that's nowhere near what we're saying right now. That was his first attempt to go above and beyond because he was trying to build his brand from back then. If you guys remember, during Super Bowl week, he made some waves when he tried to align himself with LeBron James, a person who he knows. And LeBron James even bristled at the notion that Cam Newton would put himself or his name alongside of LeBron's name, because LeBron's attitude is, dude, I've won a few championships in my sport and I've won more than one MVP. So no, you're not the LeBron James of football. But yes, he was dressing like a weirdo back then, but nothing like what we see now.
MVP. Was he dressing different? Yeah. Was he balling? Yeah. Fox furs and...
Right, but that's just swaggy. There's a difference between that and walking around looking like Little Red Riding Hood.
Out there doing all kind of crazy stuff that started this wave, and he balled out of control. So I want to disconnect the fashion from what's happening in performance. It's crazy that everyone's reaction is what we're supposed to be insulted by. Anyone in self-expression, Cam Newton right now, is he supposed to be insulted that y'all don't like it? I learned a long time ago that mockery is a compass to success. What that means is when they laughing at you, keep going, man. You might be on to something.
Or reverse your course, because you might be on to failure. Sometimes people are mocking you as a way to let you know you're hitting a societal boundary. You're hitting a societal parameter where you're about to go overboard. And you need to check yourself if you want to be a part of a conventional society or something constructive. Self-expression is a good thing, but as long as it's within reason. If you're not someone who believes in rationale or reason in your self-expression, you become an agent of chaos.
They laughed at Michael Jordan. They laughed at Michael Jordan in high school. No. And they laughed at Michael Jordan when he started his shoe with Nike.
Well, they laughed at Michael Jordan in high school because he had big ears. He grew into his ears. There's not much that you can do about that. There's a difference between being laughed at for your ear size as a teenager when your body is still changing, as opposed to walking around with a quote-unquote designer scarf wrapped around your head.
To the tune, he had to actually pay fines to just wear the shoe because they didn't match in the color coordination of the NBA.
Right, but that's within the flow of the NBA. That's within the flow of basketball. That has no correlation with this story right here, Marcellus Wiley. You're trying too hard, brother.
Tom Brady got laughed at in the combines and 6th-round draft choice. He didn't even have any talent, athletic ability.
Once again, that's a part of the game. This right here is not a part of the game. Try harder, brother.
Take it to the real world. Mark Zuckerberg got laughed at when he left Harvard. Steve Jobs got...
Right, he was embarking on his own business. That has nothing to do with this.
When he said, I'm going to make my own computer. Like, keep laughing. Like, let's not connect that what this guy is doing is his own expression, which is harmless, unless you just...
To Marcellus Wiley's point, I don't doubt that somewhere down the line, Cam Newton is going to be considered some type of fashionista, because once again, this is the energy that they're going to continue to try to push, especially on so-called black people in these last days. That being, the men should dress as feminine as possible because they're trying to attack masculinity. If you guys remember, about 5 or 6 years ago, they were making a concerted attempt to make black men start wearing dresses and skirts by having top rappers, the dudes that people say are so successful in the entertainment world. P. Diddy, Jay-Z, Kanye West. They all started wearing black leather skirts. Remember that? R. Kelly as well. Because all those dudes are witches. They're told what to wear to influence the masses. Because they're all a part of the quote-unquote great work. That being the unification of the quote-unquote divine feminine and the divine masculine. They all worship the quote-unquote divine hermaphrodite that they call Baphomet. That's what this is all about. So to get back to Marcellus Wiley's attempt at a point, would it shock me if Cam Newton became one of the faces of one of these Italian designers overseas, like Gucci or Versace? No, it wouldn't. Because those companies are ran by homosexuals. That's the energy.
Not comfortable in your own skin, and then connected to his performance, because when he did this before and he balled, we didn't hear a word.
I've never seen this.
You haven't seen that?
No.
No.
He changes his outfit every time. That's called
Cam Newton has never been this extravagant before. No.
fashionista.
What happened is this. It's what you just said. If you're going to dress like this and he basically started NFL guys going to press conferences and dressing nice and outrageous and just grabbing it.
Yeah, not so much nice, more outrageous is the better word. He was the one that was used to push that in the NFL. The NBA really started it. I'll give you guys another example. To TJ's point, if you're going to dress like that, you better come up big. When Muhammad Ali was boxing, he normally would wear a pair of white shorts or white trunks with a black stripe down the side. He wore that because that's what Sugar Ray Robinson wore. Ray Robinson was his hero. After Ali was removed from boxing for over 3 years, he came back and he started dressing a little differently. In the Frazier fight, he wore shoes with fringes or tassels on them because he was trying to show more swag. After he got knocked down and lost that fight, he stopped wearing the shoes with tassels because he understood that his appearance was becoming too great of a concern for him rather than his performance. He started to go back to the basic attire. He won more and more bouts. And then Elvis Presley gave him a robe that had rhinestones on it. I believe he fought 1 or 2 fights in the robe with the rhinestones. And then he fought against Ken Norton. In their first fight, he got his jaw broke. He never wore that robe again because he understood that when you go too far into extravagance, when you have to be focused on the endeavor at hand, it can have an impact on your performance.
You have to play well. And when you don't play well, you're going to get these you're not focused on football. I don't mind it personally. This is his style. He started doing it. I have no problem.
That's on him. But once again, my attitude is the more extravagant you dress, the better you have to play. Right now, Cam Newton should be playing like Pat Mahomes. He's not playing anywhere near Pat Mahomes. As a matter of fact, he's starting to deteriorate as a player. That's obvious.
At all.
You can lead like that. You got everybody on the internet making fun of you, laughing at you. You got women sports writers laughing.
What it is?
Whitlock, let's be for real. You can't say it on TV. Even though you call your show the most fearless show on television when it comes to sports, we know that there are boundaries that you cannot cross. Let's keep it 100. Cam Newton is dressed like a bitch. You don't want to say it because you can't say it on TV. And you know that when a man exudes bitch energy, he cannot lead.
With society, they've never seen this before from a quarterback. And so if you've never seen it, everybody's looking at it like...
TJ Husmanzada, we've never seen this before from a professional athlete who was expected to lead. That's Whitlock's point. That's why he's reflecting on people like Dennis Rodman, who all of a sudden has become some type of societal hero. And what you'll find, and that's why I always tell brothers to pay very close attention, these people who try to act like they're at the vanguard of liberating everybody else, they always have all of these mental issues and psychological problems that they're trying to cover by being an agent of chaos. They want to bring everyone else into their chaotic world, and people follow them to their own destruction. Today we have people like Odell Beckham, or in the music world, Chris Brown, extremely talented. But whenever I see someone who wants to cover their whole body with tattoos like Odell Beckham or Chris Brown, that tells me that there's something about themselves that they're embarrassed about, that psychologically they're trying to cover up their body. There's something that happened in their past that has shamed them. The same thing with Dennis Rodman. With Cam Newton, he's someone to watch.
What is he doing? Now, when I do it, I'm not wearing the scarf. I'm not putting that on my head.
Of course, it's going to cover up that ponytail. You want to show off the ponytail.
But that's what he wants to do. Is it distracting him from being a franchise quarterback? It isn't. He's just not playing well right now, so it gives people something to talk about. That's just what it is. And he knows that. And if he starts playing well...
You can beat Dennis Rodman at quarterback.
Absolutely not.
Only you can. If you
No, you cannot. Dennis Rodman was balling. In the NBA, he was one of the most impactful players in the league for a 10-year stretch. Say from 87 to 97. He was one of the top 5, say top 10 to top 5 most impactful players in the entire NBA. Maybe higher. Who knows? But he was never a leader. And he had to be within a framework of strong leadership to bring out the best within him and allow him to perform on a championship level. You could not be Dennis Rodman and lead a team. No way in hell. Dennis Rodman would tell you that.
I'll say this. I'm around this new generation, this new era of millennials. Yep.
Millennial is code word for mama's boy.
Does first answer the question. Yes, he is serious about being a franchise quarterback, and I think he wants nothing more than to be able to end this season off with winning a Super Bowl. I do believe that that's his main focus.
A lot of people say that they want to be certain things, but they're not willing to go through the regiment of being that. The main aspect of success in life is the embracing of monotony, repetition, and isolation. When you can accept those main components in success, then nothing's going to be able to stop you. But when you're more obsessed with making sure that people understand how far you could push the needle in the fashion world, there's no way that you're going to be a great success as a leader in the sports sphere. There's no way.
But when you look at the other things that he's doing, well, he's dealing with that generation of young men. He's putting on the fashion. He's out there in the 7-on-7 world. He's around this all the time. And I think it's more culturally driven. Now, you made the statement about Tom Brady.
Cats love making this excuse about something being culturally driven. What is the culture of the so-called black community right now? Let's scrutinize this. Let's measure these words that we're using before we use them about what the culture is of things or the time period that we're living in. The black community is dominated by the black matriarchal energy, meaning the black woman is using herself as a conduit of worship by associating herself with the mother goddess. Her sons are being raised to worship the quote-unquote divine feminine. They have no idea what manhood is. They have no idea what leadership is. That's why they struggle with these things when they're placed in a position of prominence, whether it's in the sports world or in corporate America. That's why they don't trust the so-called black man to lead, because they know that we're being raised in overly effeminized environments.
Other gentleman, Drew Brees, they 100% put as much effort and time into what it is they're going to wear. It just doesn't come across the same exact way. It's not.
That's the point. You could lay down a beautiful 3-piece suit on your bed, and you could also lay down a 3-piece clown suit. They both take effort, but the energy that's going to be emitted from how you dress is going to play a major part in how you're perceived. And I don't understand why a lot of these guys can't grasp that or accept that. But I really do understand why. Because the so-called black man has become unbelievably liberal in these last days, i.e. a simp. Whether it's by proxy or directly, they worship the feminine energy. A lot of these so-called black men are so weak mentally, psychologically, and spiritually because their whole life they've been in households dominated first by their mother and then later on by their wives. So they're scared to make a stand on anything.
Look, if you look at, take 2 seconds and look at what Tom Brady is wearing when he's in the press conference.
Boom.
It is probably at least $5,000 this, $6,000 that.
Right, but it's not about the cost of the outfit. It's about the energy that exudes from it. What are you trying to say with how you dress? Once again, the scriptures tell us that you could tell a lot about a man based on his attire.
And it's usually brands that he represents. And he's a high-end guy and a high-end billboard for those guys. So they do take very, very much thought into what it is that they're doing. I just think that when you look at what Cam is doing, I think it's very much in the realm of it does push the envelope. It's very very colorful. It's very expressionary.
Cam Newton is concerned with having a front row seat at some of these fashion expos in Milan, Italy, and Florence over the summer and what have you. That's what he's concerned about right now. He wants to be able to sit down next to Russell Westbrook and a lot of these other clowns.
And sometimes I think, and this is just me, I think older generations, a lot of times, like you'll hear older guys, the one thing I'm okay with, keep your pants pulled up. but as far as just saying, okay, well, he has a bonnet on his head as an old head, you sit there and say, man, that's weird.
This is what young people are doing.
That's
You
weird.
at a high school. Are the guys showing up, they're wearing bonnets on your football team?
Young people
Are they
these
wearing
days,
bonnets on your football team?
No, they are not. Let me say this. I live in New York City. I have never seen a grown-ass man or a young boy, teenager, what have you, with a scarf or handkerchief tied on his head like Cam Newton. Now, back in the day, we would take scarves and tie them around the top of our head like a pirate, because that goes back to our history. We always wore scarves and stuff like that on the top of our head, but not like that. He's dressing like an old ass lady.
They do a lot. They do a lot. Let me tell you something. Fashion-wise, but you'll see it. But you will see it.
That's the first one I saw with this.
Yeah, it's coming.
Right, A$AP Rocky is a pansexual, allegedly, but that's what he is. All these guys in the industry, they're all witches. That's my point. They're using these dudes to push that feminine energy on the masses of so-called black men to make you think that it's acceptable to wear your clothes in a feminine or effeminate way.
The point.
But you know what's crazy? What's crazy about this is, like, it's what he wants to do. For us to even put the restrictions on there and say you can't leave. I remember there was a time where people...
Marcellus Wiley, that's called an orderly society. That's why you're on a TV show right now in a three-piece suit, or at least a suit with a tie. Because you understand that based on your environment, you have to dress a certain way. I'm sure that when your son comes of age and he decides that he wants to work in corporate America, if that's what he decides to do, if he comes to you for advice and says, Dad, how should I dress? You're not going to say, son, dress however you want. It's up to you based on how you want to express yourself that day. You're going to say, son, make sure that you're suited and booted. Make sure that your tie is tied appropriately so that you can convey that you're serious about this position that you're going for. You always have to dress according to your environment. When you go to war, you wear army fatigues. When you go into corporate America, you wear a suit, or at the very least, slacks and a collared button-down shirt. That's normally how it goes. In the football world, as a quarterback, you're a CEO. You're not a regular guy working in a cubicle somewhere or in the mailroom. So you have to show those under you that you have everything together. Cam Newton's playing style matches his dressing style. That's the problem.
Steve Young could really take over the 49ers. Why? Because he was a cerebral guy. He was a thinker. You ever been around Steve Young? You know, we about to leave this planet for a minute.
Nothing against you, Marcellus Wiley. You're a very intelligent brother. But I can tell that you know that you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to this topic right here, because you're continuously making false equivalencies. What would Steve Young being hyper intelligent have to do with Cam Newton dressing like a $2 bitch?
The conversation in depth. And people question that. Like, you can lead any type of way as long as the performance is what dictates it.
Everybody knew that Steve Young was going to be a great quarterback. The only question was whether or not he would be as good as Joe Montana, who was considered at that time the greatest quarterback of all time. But everyone knew that Steve Young was waiting in the wings for his chance. So stop it.
Have to change the problem. No, it's not a problem. Stop that. That's a bad message to tell a kid. Oh,
This is a super liberal black male run amok. He's not even quite sure what TJ Husmanzada's point was, but he said stop it. Because all of that feminine energy, that simp energy is coming out of him. And nothing against Marcellus. Very intelligent brother. But from the moment that he said he was engaged 4 times to 4 different women before his current marriage, I knew that he was simp certified. Because that meant that he was desperate to find some woman somewhere to be his wife. And every time these type of topics come up, Marcellus just goes off on self-expression and the freedom of self-expression. You absolutely have the right to express yourself however you want, but not when you have people under you. You do not. You cannot do what you want when you're in command and you have people who are looking to you for leadership, guidance, and some type of balance.
Until that is not working in performance.
No, I'm not saying that's a problem. What I'm saying is the narrative is it's a problem.
Okay, gotcha.
Because when you wear the expressionary clothes and the colors, it's perceived as, he putting all this time into this instead of football.
But it's a misperception, and this is crazy. This is the worst.
No, it's not a misperception, Marcellus, because as we can see, Cam Newton's not playing well. Misperceptions are based on a correlation that's not of substance. So, for example, if Cam Newton was out there balling, throwing for 4,500 yards every year, and he had one bad game, and people tried to blame his attire or how he was dressed, then you could say, no, that's not a correlation that we're going to make because it's not something that's valid. But he has not played well for the duration of the time that he's been dressing in this extra extravagant way. There's a difference between his eccentricity of a few years ago and how he's dressing now, which is overtly feminine. And that's something that Whitlock can't say. It's a hot button that no one really can address on television. The fact of the matter is that Cam Newton's dressing like someone who's considering having some type of transsexual operation. Nobody wants to say that. It is what it is. If that's the case, that's his business. But that's how he's dressing. Because even females in the media are mocking him.
Perception that the players can't take advantage of their brand, enhance their brand, when the NFL's priority is protection of its brand and its shield. So a league is not supposed to leave any stones unturned or any money on the table, but a player's supposed to. Look what happens when he does this. Russell Westbrook has a line at Barney's in New York.
Russell Westbrook is not a championship level player.
What happens when you talk about
winning? Go ahead.
He ain't winning in what? A championship or winning in life and winning in the game?
Well, yes, he's winning in life, but you would expect that, Marcellus Wiley. He's a star athlete. He should be making tens of millions of dollars both on and off the court. But what does that really mean? The point is to win championships. It's very difficult to take you seriously, especially in previous conversations where you stated that winning was not a priority for you. And you basically only thought about yourself. But the difference is that you played defensive line. You were a defensive end. You were not a quarterback. You were not expected to lead people. So you're speaking on a topic that really you're not qualified to speak on because your perspective is skewed.
Is he a Hall of Famer? That's not winning?
He's not winning game.
There are people who have
He's not winning the big one.
championships and are lesser than a Russell Westbrook. So I don't even want to get into that conversation. We got.
Well, I'm sure that you would try to make more false equivalencies. You'll bring up people like Robert Horry, which is something that two-dimensional thinkers do, or cats who are being disingenuous do whenever they try to claim that winning championships is not that important. If we're going to compare championship level players, we have to compare stars. No one would compare Russell Westbrook to Kobe Bryant, to Kevin Durant, to LeBron James, to Michael Jordan, to Hakeem, to Shaq, to Tim Duncan, all the championship level star players. That's the comparison. It wouldn't be comparing Russell to a role player who won a few championships. That's Whitlock's point.
Deion is one of the most colorful dressing dudes when he played the game a lot.
Once again, false equivalency. Deion Sanders is not a quarterback. As a matter of fact, he's on the total opposite end of the spectrum of a quarterback. He's a cornerback. The symbolic terminology that's used for cornerbacks is what? That they're on an island. Basically, elite level corners are expected to just shut their man down. And when you're on the level of a Deion Sanders, oftentimes you don't even consider what the other defensive backs are doing in the backfield because you've been told to just shut down whoever it is that you're guarding. A Sterling Sharp, a Jerry Rice, a Randy Moss, a Chris Carter, Michael Irvin, whoever Deion was guarding at the time, they just basically let him do whatever the hell he wanted to do. So you cannot compare his form of expression to a quarterback.
A lot of people, no, he did not. He did not. He did not.
This was a quarterback. And look, man, my overall point here, I'm telling Cam's bored. They got him on the field.
He's partially bored, but he's also partially been liberated. I think that you're forgetting, Whitlock, that there's been a change in ownership. Jerry Richardson is no longer there. So now Cam could be the person that he always wanted to be. Once again, Jerry Richardson told Cam, you're not going to get any of these wild hairstyles while you're here. I want a quarterback that has a regular haircut and no tats. That's what he told him.
And so stay in the pocket, Cam. Again, when you have all those physical gifts and they put them restrictions, no, we want you to play the game the way Tom Brady does. And he's trying, but it's not his style. Everything he's showing you in terms of his fashion, in terms of everything, his hair, the whole thing, he's trying to tell you, I'm one of these guys that needs to be in the attention. I need diversity. I need to be free.
Was he bored last?
Yeah, like a liberal black woman. He needs to be free.
When he was 6-2 in the MVP conversation wearing crazy stuff?
Hey, Marcellus, I have bad news for you. You're giving me his record after 8 games. An NFL season is 16 games long.
Marathon, Marcellus. Yeah. It's a marathon.
So
and that's right that he was 6-2.
Yeah.
Did he get to 12-4 and into the postseason? He's lost, 8 straight games? It's been 4 straight games. He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass. And again, you're making my point when you bring up Steve Young. If we can question Steve Young about being cerebral, I can damn sure question a quarterback that's trying to lead a game that's built on this kind of toxic masculinity, showing up to the game and post-game press conferences dressed like Queen Elizabeth. And I'm looking...
He said he dressed like Queen Elizabeth.
Female sports writers make this exact same point. He's turned himself into a laughingstock.
Because females like to mock men for not being manly enough. Once again, the modern liberal woman does not want to be defined by men, but she understands that there are gender definitions. There are parameters for masculinity that if you try to go beyond those borders or beyond those parameters, they're not going to consider you a man anymore. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's what I try to get so many of you brothers to understand. You have the ability to define what a woman is. You have to already understand what a woman is in your mind so that you know what you're dealing with. So many cats out here think that a woman is just someone with a fat ass, good coochie, and nice titties. And that's not what a woman is. It's a woman's job to know how to make you happy, just like it's your job to know how to make the Most High happy. But that's a whole digression. Just getting back to the point. The reason why these female sportscasters and sports writers are getting on Cam Newton is because they see that he seems to have an identity issue and he's starting to infringe upon their territory of womanhood. That's why they're getting at him. Women in general, they become threatened when they see men starting to act more feminine because they understand intrinsically the importance of their own feminine energy. That's why they're starting to come against the transsexual athletes that are allowed to compete with actual women. But that is, of course, a whole other topic for another day.
Not a great lane for a quarterback. That didn't happen to Jordan. It didn't happen to Brady. All these people you write up, Kobe Bryant, any of these people that are different, they're not laughing stocks. Cam Newton.
And they all came to the game suited and booted in a conventional way. They didn't want any type of distractions on their outfit or what have you. As a matter of fact, Michael Jordan was worried about Dennis Rodman being a distraction. And Marcellus Wiley is claiming that your top quarterback can have Dennis Rodman energy. Are you nuts? Did you see that Dennis Rodman documentary on ESPN? That dude is a basket case.
Driving into that laughingstock lane, he's bored. He's bored by the style of play he's having to play. Greatness at that quarterback position and just greatness in life is very boring and routine.
Absolutely. And this is for a lot of you brothers out there who are not quite sure what you want to do with your life. You have to learn to embrace isolation. That's why I tell cats, when you're going through a transitional period, do not absolutely. And brothers, this is why I constantly try to accentuate to so many of you cats out there, especially many of you younger brothers who are 14, 15, 18 years old and are still not quite sure what you want to do with your life. I always state that corporate America is not for the so-called black man, but hey, an honest living is an honest living. But for those of you who want to be bigger and better, when you're going through transitional phases in your life, you cannot be in a relationship because people are not going to want to go along for the ride. They don't want to go along for the journey. They want to meet you at the destination and smile and ask you, let me see some of those big checks. That's what they're about. So you have to embrace being an isolationist. You have to embrace that. You have to know how to be by yourself and understand the importance of repetition and monotony. And one of the main facts of life that may be difficult for a lot of cats to grasp and accept is that women are not good with monotony. In any society where you have a strong marriage or relationship structure, there are very strong restrictions placed on the woman. Bottom line. But just getting back to the point that Willock is making right here, Cam Newton is too extravagant to ever be a great quarterback. He just is. When we look at the history of the NFL, the only extravagant quarterback that really won a championship as the leader was Joe Namath. And contrary to how he's perceived or the image that's projected about him, he really came up short. He was expected to be a lot better than he was in the NFL, and he came up short. When you compare him to Roger Staubach, who was kind of the anti-Joe Namath, he was way behind Roger, and Roger was buttoned up.
And that boring and routine does not fit Cam's personality. He's a wide receiver.
First of all, you actually make my point when I made the point about Steve Young. Those were the wrong questions to ask. They asked him, and they...
Right, but Marcellus Wiley, once again, being a hyper intellect is consistent with being a great quarterback. So this notion that Steve Young was not going to be a great quarterback because he was too brainy, if anything, they may have worried that he had other interests that will stop him from being totally focused on football. But for those of us who remember that time period from 89 to like 92, whenever it was that Steve took over, I think Steve took over in 91 because Joe Montana got hurt in the NFC Championship game in 91 against the Giants when Leonard Marshall crushed his back and Steve Young took over. The issue was that Steve Young was almost too robotic on the football field. There was never a question of how successful he was going to be or whether or not he was going to be a great quarterback. Steve Young was a great quarterback. He's a little bit overrated because he struggled in the big game. But everything that we're talking about with Steve Young has to do with football. With Cam Newton, we're talking about how he's dressed.
Proven wrong. Cam Newton has already proven them wrong. You already have seen him in the same marathon do these same things and put up a great performance. So if he wears a sweat,
when he was eccentric, not what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing right now is going way overboard.
he gonna ball.
But
If he just wears a nice little
no. I'm not saying he changed the mindset has to change. And Cam's into extra. He wants to be extra. He's into extra stuff. He wants to run like a running back and celebrate like Superman and do all this. And they've taken it away from me. And so
they are injuries. Injuries is not they.
Injuries, coaching, age, whatever has taken it away.
Attrition. Cam has been beaten down.
You can see it in his personality. And again, the quarterback position at the money that they're paying, it's not a one-season, one-off thing. They want you to string that together for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 years. And again, I think everybody is so focused on brand and my platform, and they haven't factored in like, hey man, at these prices that the NFL's paying now, Dak's about to get $35 million a year.
Well, you know, Whitlock, I think that one of the inconvenient truths for many of these athletes, especially Cam Newton, is that whether he wants to admit it or not, or whether Russell Westbrook wants to admit it or not, there are a lot of great athletes that get on TV and talk about winning championships, but in their private moments, they say to themselves, I'm never going to win a championship. I might as well start prepping myself for my post-football career or post-basketball career. And unless I get traded to the right spot and I'm given the right opportunity in my mind, I'm just going to try to make as much money as possible, make as many spectacular plays as possible, say the right things, make it sound like I'm concerned about winning a championship, but I have to prep myself for my post-athlete career. And I think that Cam Newton is starting to have those thoughts in his head as well.
We don't care about your brand in this other platform.
And who has the biggest brand as a football player?
Tom Brady.
No way.
No.
That's up for debate.
That's Odell Beckham.
It's Odell Beckham.
No, I ain't say who's more famous.
Yeah.
Odell Beckham's brand is what? TB12 is what?
Odell's brand is being an agent of chaos. Tom Brady's brand is having everything together. I'm a winner, and I'm high class. I do believe that Tom Brady has a better brand. I'm not sure who has a more lucrative brand between him and Odell.
TB12 getting paid by the NFL damn near.
But it's where the bar is at.
TB12 has synergy with football.
I feel like, and I'm just as old as you guys, so don't take offense to this. I just feel like I'm listening to, like, this is an old man's conversation.
It is. Thank you.
It's an old man's conversation.
Yes.
So
No, it's not really an old man's conversation. It's more of a pragmatic conversation. Once again, when you walk to the set, you didn't come to the set in a wife beater and your drawers. There's a reason why you have a tie on and a sweater and a button-up shirt, because there's a way that you dress when you're doing a certain profession. If you're truly as new age as you're trying to act like you are, then you should come to Whitlock and say, you know what, I want to dress how I want to dress. At the end of the day, Cam Newton understands deep down what his chances are of being a winner in football. And I think that he's starting to grasp that it's very slim.
to an older generation of people, you make 100% sense.
No.
Right?
Marcellus.
I appreciate that. That's a compliment.
You know what football is and the quarterback position is? It's an old man's game, and it's an old man's game.
Not anymore. The position is changing just like the narrative is changing.
When any of these guys that have changed the position, call me when they win 6 Super Bowls.
Well,
let me know.
Let
me know.
You got to give it time. You got.
Well, yeah, let me know. When it happens, I'll flip.
I'll say this. There was about a 4-year stretch in the NFC where there was a black quarterback, because, of course, that's what they're talking about. When they say that the narrative is changing on the quarterback, they're really talking about the black quarterback and the swag energy. There was about a 4-year stretch where black quarterbacks represented the NFC in the Super Bowl. It was Kaepernick, it was Russell Wilson twice, and then it was Cam. The only one of those quarterbacks who won a Super Bowl was Russell Wilson, and he was the most buttoned up of all of those quarterbacks. And he really should have won 2.
Speaking, look at, and I hate to you know, make it like where you're borderlining it, where we're talking about white and black, because I don't want it to turn into a racial situation.
Because it's not.
Guys like Baker Mayfield walk the same type of line where they may do their expressions in a different way.
That's true. And how successful is Baker going to be in the long run? How successful do we think Baker's going to be in the long run? Even super talented quarterbacks like Brett Favre probably left championships on the table because they were not as buttoned up as they should have been.
Again, I just think that there's a disconnect between what the establishment of tradition represents in terms of now current.
I also think that it's a bit of a shame that so many quote-unquote adult black males are so willing to leave tradition behind, when it's obvious that tradition has always had a very close association or correlation with culture. I think that's a reflection on the lack of esteem that so-called black men have for culture, because our people don't really have a real culture other than worshiping women.
Call me when Lamar Jackson walks into the press conference in a bonnet. Call me then. That's when I'll believe.
But Cam didn't do that. Cam did not do that in his year one. Cam didn't do that in year one or year two.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying.
Russell Wilson, what year is he?
Guys
when
evolve.
he does it.
I think because brands are so important and they mean so much now, and the exposure is so amazing with all of this new technology, that guys are more progressive.
Progressive is code for liberal. Once again, a lot of these so-called black men, this is the reason why our people are struggling so much. The older guys in their late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, who are supposed to be strong leaders, they're weak. They don't have a spine. They can get in the gym and lift 400 pounds in the bench press, but in the household, they're like pussycats in front of their wives. They're scared of their wives because they don't really have a leg to stand on. Their women are being taught by the television that they're the leaders of the household, and these men don't want to make waves, so they just go along to get along. And it comes out. Brothers have to understand that that's the point of the Bible. The Bible tells us why we're supposed to do what we do and why we're not supposed to do what we've been reprimanded for doing or prohibited from doing. It gives us a baseline. It gives us a foundation. The so-called black man today has no foundation to proclaim what's right or wrong because he's become liberal. His mother taught him to be liberal. And now our entire community is running amok because for the most part, most of these guys are scared, man. They're scared of their woman.
Way more progressive.
I gotta get my Twitter off, bro. Stop. We're having a conversation.
The reason why Whitlock had to spray his Twitter off is because he understood and realized exactly what I've been saying. That what LeVar Arrington was spewing, it comes straight off of social media. All that progressive, liberal bullshit, they're more progressive today. In other words, LeVar Arrington feels like he has to be cool with his high school football team. He has to show them that he knows all the rap songs that they know. And when they come in dressed like 14-year-old girls with skin-tight jeans on and their hair pulled back in a bun, he has to act as if he's accepting of that or he's going to lose his team. The so-called black man is no longer viewed as a leader. The older black man is no longer viewed as a leader at all. And it's because he's embraced these liberal philosophies. When you read the book of Isaiah, the 3rd chapter, starting at verse 1, the Most High tells us that he would take away from us the honorable man and the cunning artificer and the great orator or the eloquent orator, and that children will be placed in positions of prominence. That's what we're seeing in this society, in the form of the woman and the actual child. We actually have to, quote unquote, bow down to their energies because we no longer accept that being a man is about being a leader and showing your wisdom and your prudence, so on and so forth. It's really shameful.
Like in today's modern NFL locker rooms, there are guys that don't play for the Carolina Panthers going, did y'all see him?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, what's new?
That's right. That's new. 100%.
But then there's a whole bunch where
when you saw that, you didn't think that?
But then there's a whole bunch of them taking pictures with Cam and they posting it like they in front of the airplane. It's almost...
Because everybody wants to stand next to the quarterback. He's like the most popular guy in high school. It doesn't mean that they approve of how he's dressing. They just know that he's the star of the team. What are they going to tell him? Stop dressing like that? They can't. He's making the most money.
It's a deal where these guys take pictures together, getting on and off of the airplanes, different things like that.
I ain't seen the
Marcel, they take.
You gonna call me Marcel?
Whitlock said, I've seen them swap jerseys. I've never seen them swap bonnets.
How many people y'all think in the locker room when they saw him? Why what you got on today? They giving.
We did that when I played.
That's what I'm saying. So
when you had a 20
the guys on the team, Marcellus, they can't know him about what he wears.
Also compete to be best dressed, and a lot of guys these days really take pride.
He's not winning.
And take. I think it's
best dress is subjective.
No, LeVar Arrington. There's no way in the world that Cam Newton is possibly winning any contest in the locker room for best dress, unless his teammates are RuPaul, Antoine Merriweather, and Blaine Edwards from In Living Color. That's about it. That's the only way that he's going to win a fashion award is if he's going against people like that, or if those people are his teammates. That's it.
Yes,
very subjective.
Yeah, I gotta understand. First of all, we moving in so many places. So let's go back to the quarterback position, how it's evolved.
Sure.
Highest paid quarterback is Russell Wilson. That's a 2.0 under 6 foot quarterback. You saying the game ain't changed, the position hasn't changed. Not only has the position changed in X and O's and demands, but even the culture of the position. You can express yourself in a many different ways. I remember, this is a parallel to me. J.J. Watt came out with all these workout videos. Remember he was
Once again, Marcellus Wiley is making correlations to people who are actually doing things for football as opposed to dressing like fruitcakes. This brother's trying so hard to prove that it's okay for Cam Newton to dress like a gay pirate, and he's failing at every turn.
cabins and doing all these workout videos, and people used to come at J.J. Watt sideways. Why is he always showing us him working out and looking crazy? Mockery, right? Next thing you know, A.B., Cam Newton, all these guys have production teams, OBJ doing it. You know what the positive of this is? There are now high schoolers. When they work out, they trying to film it too. It has created a positive peer pressure for you to do your thing.
What the hell does that have to do with Cam Newton dressed like Aunt Jemima, as Whitlock stated, Marcellus Wiley? What does that have to do with anything?
Your way. And now you're going to make that a negative because he's into his self-expression, which really doesn't have a connection to his thing.
To me, some things are on brand, some things are off brand.
Agreed.
And so to me, the whole workout thing that JJ, that's on brand for.
Even TJ Husmanzada understands that what Marcellus is doing is has nothing to do with the conversation at all.
That plays well in a football
has
locker room.
expanded over the years of what is on brand. We used to have no laundry between double days and smoking in the locker room.
There's no question about that. I'm just saying this here is off brand, particularly for the quarterback.
Simple as that.
I don't think it's going to be a part of some new brand during Cam's career.
When you say off-brand, is it because predominantly coming up, there haven't been many African-American quarterbacks that would express themselves?
Can we stop?
Whoa, not to do it. Not to do it.
I just want to stop. Please, God. No, but TJ, please.
Yeah, please stop before we have a heart attack.
And LeVar, please.
That's that pastor, please.
It is. It really is. Because him, Lord. Because again, I don't want people watching at home.
Get him.
I don't want people watching home. Oh, so the black thing to do as a black man is put a bonnet on your head. That's not us. That's not our culture. Stop it.
Well, I'll say this. It's not so-called black culture to put a scarf on your head like that. But even going back to the ancient world, we had scarves that we would tie a certain type of way, but just not like that. He's dressed like an old lady.
I'm not done. Stop it. And so, again, that's a Queen Elizabeth thing as far as that's theirs. And so if Cam wants to do...
You said Queen Elizabeth. Cam out here dressed like Elizabeth Taylor when she was hiding out in her mansion.
That's fine, but don't put that on us.
Fashionably forward has been essentially...
Fashionably forward is code word for dressing in a more effeminate way. They no longer want the man to dress in male attire. That's why you'll notice even many of these female quote-unquote celebrities, they'll come to some of these galas or balls or what have you, dressed in a man's suit. Because once again, all feminism is a projection of penis envy. The woman associates male attire with authority. They no longer want the man's authority. So now men are being taught to no longer dress like men, and women are being taught to dress as manly as possible.
related to a cultural deal. It is a cultural deal.
Minus the
Colorful
bonnet
clothing,
hair.
I'm the king of that.
I'm
My
not
daddy's
a
the king
bonnet
of that.
guy myself. I would not want to do a bonnet deal. Have I worn scarves on my head when it was cold outside and the scarf went all the way down? Fashionably speaking, yes, I have. I never tied it under my chin.
All I'm saying
that's
is
just how
I
I
just
feel.
get tired of whatever some athlete does. My God, oh, that's the new black thing. Just because one person did it.
That's the point, Whitlock. They want him to be a quote-unquote influencer. That's why I stated that about 5 or 6 years ago, they had a whole bunch of quote-unquote black rappers, i.e. pansexuals, so-called celebrities, as well as certain black actors who were wearing skirts. They even had Omar Epps doing it. That's what they're trying to do with Cam Newton and Russell Westbrook. They're paying a lot of these dudes. Most of those guys are pansexuals behind closed doors as well. And they're saying, look, we're going to have a stylist come to your home. They're going to lay out some clothes on the bed for you. You put those on. In return, we'll make you a bigger celebrity. The goal is to get young black men dressing like girls.
I just think is when you drive trends, when you drive culture, it's always going to be turbulent
Oh, yeah, he's trying to
along the
drive
way.
some culture. Yes,
It's always going to be
And
turbulent
I'm saying
along the way.
football is going to reject that.
No, they not. You remember when Jordan came out with the shoe, and you know why he got?
This dude keeps making these terrible analogies. Marcellus Wiley, please stop, bro. Why are you comparing Michael Jordan wearing a basketball shoe to how Cam Newton is dressed before the game when he's clearly dressed like a damn woman?
Because he didn't have a
The league finding him. That's not.
And
the
you know why
locker
it
room.
became rebellion?
That's not his peers.
It was rebellion in the whole NBA culture. We are used to two-tone. Remember when Magic had his shoe and those plain Converse?
Bad analogy.
It's not a
Terrible analogy.
bad analogy because sometimes you got to stretch the lines for it to become norm. And if the dude is doing something that's
So Marcellus Wiley, are you saying that football players are going to start wearing scarves like that to the game? Or are they going to start wearing scarves like that in the game? If that's what you're claiming, then that would be an appropriate analogy. Because what Michael Jordan was doing was in the game.
the lines become norm. Why are you upset at that?
Because again, look, Dennis Rodman tried to stress the norm, and most of the NBA rejected it. That's not the norm. Now, some of Dennis Rodman, everybody all tatted up. Yeah, that's part of the norm.
about to say, don't act like it all went away.
But again,
Don't act like it all
The
went away.
bonnet, though, that's not going to become the norm. That's not going to become the norm. Now, we're talking.
He's saying it's going to be the norm for me.
We would have
What
never
is the
thought
problem with him saying,
zippers
I
on
don't-
jeans,
look,
skinny jeans.
you
We
have
never
jeans.
thought that would have been a norm.
Yeah.
Who would have went there and said, I'm going to have zippers and biker pants?
I'm not surprised that became the norm. That was the point of the quote-unquote rap industry starting to promote Lil Wayne as well as Dipset in the early 2000s. Their job was to push the skinny jean look or the skater boy look. I remember when this dude Lupe Fiasco had that song about being a skater. And from there, Lil Wayne grabbed onto it, Dipset, and just like that, the style of jeans went from being baggy to being fitted. I mean, it was amazing.
Like,
Rip
with
all my clothes
come
up.
Hey,
on,
man, I'm just telling you this. At that position
not
he
a
plays,
revolution.
it's a leadership position.
Revolution.
That does not play in a football locker
Hey,
room.
put it like this. If
And
I
y'all,
was a
y'all can
Panther,
fake the funk
times
if you want
will
to.
If I was a Panther, he'd be my leader. And I'd be like, go get it, Cam. Throw some more touchdowns. I don't give a damn what you wear.
Throw what touchdowns? He's not throwing any touchdowns. What are you talking about, man? Marcellus Wiley here being the normal super liberal black male acting as an agent of chaos.
No. What you
I
were
know,
saying,
I'm
the
sorry.
your
Isn't
first
in the Bible.
touchdown is what you would say. You haven't thrown one
Oh,
in
you
a
know what
month.
I wouldn't say?
You haven't
You know
thrown
what
one
I
in
wouldn't
4
say to
games.
MVP?
You ain't won
I
a
wouldn't
game
let
in
that
What MVP? Marcellus Wiley think that Cam Newton has been the MVP for the last 3 years. The MVP award that he won was back in 2015, brother. It's over.
mouth out to MVP. And if I was sitting on that level, then I would.
Save the show, Jesus.
Hold it. My God. How many guys in that locker room do you think?
He trying to give Whitlock a heart attack for real. Yo, Marcellus Wiley, you better watch out, bro. Because if Whitlock dropped dead on his set, you're going to have to go back to ESPN.
There in 2015 didn't give a damn about his MVP.
Really?
In
Oh, you
2015.
think all that equity is gone? You?
Hell yeah.
Absolutely, all that equity is gone, bro. I promise you that. In the defensive planning room, they're saying, you know what? Let's keep Cam in the pocket if we can. He does not even really want to run around anymore. But we want to force Cam to try to hit his wide receivers. That's it. Cam is not a threat throwing the football. If he's not going to run, he could pretty much be nullified. He still has the potential for doing something spectacular, but ain't nobody scared of Cam Newton.
He ain't won in 8
You
starts.
ain't been in the locker room.
He ain't won in 8 starts. That's when he's gone.
You know
he's
what?
on a touchdown in 4 games.
And 8 Hall of Famers are in the Hall of Fame who have lost 8 or more games. So what you talking about?
8 straight?
Yeah, 8 Hall of Famers,
8
brother.
straight.
Yes, 8 straight.
In the prime of their career.
And Warren Moon did it twice. Got quiet for a reason. Don't do me up.
Right, but Warren Moon was buttoned up, so that's another false equivalency. Warren Moon was known as being the guy who came up short in the playoffs also. I remember the game when he blew the 30-point lead to the Buffalo Bills.
Those 4 straight games without throwing a touchdown.
Respect is in the person, not the
Stick
not
around.
the fashion.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. This was just another entry into the series of black male athletes as leaders. And this is going to be the edition focusing on the agenda, in my view, to utilize prominent black male athletes as a proxy to attempt or try to encourage the younger black males all across America to dress in a more feminine way. And it's very obvious that Cam Newton, he's just a pawn. I mean, look at how this guy is dressed. It looks ridiculous. Motherfucker.